This is the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles.
Everybody, welcome into the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast, brought to you by PrizePicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks, run your game. Also, my good friends over at Naterno Home Services. That's my home comfort company. You can get 10% off your next service with Naterno. That could save you up to $1,000 on your next project. Just visit Naterno Home, that's Notturno home.com/Bedard. So, Eliot Wolf spoke at the Combine today. Like with a lot of these things, nothing, out of the ordinary or earth-shattering, but wanted to go over, at least a couple of key things. First of all, let's start with final say, because that's going to be the biggest topic of conversation coming out of that. Mike Giardi, who was there for us, asked him about last year. He said he had final say. He walked up to the podium, basically, was very declarative about having final say. Mike asked him, is it the same situation this year? And Eliot said, yeah, it's similar. I would just say, listening to Coach Vrabel, there's not a lot of GMs or people in my position in this business that are going to force players on coaching staff. Certainly the best decisions are made together, and going to continue to work with Mike and Ryan, that's Ryan Cowden, and Stretch, John Stryker, and the scouting staff, and everybody to make those decisions the best we can. I think it was Phil Perry pressed him on it to clarify, do you have final say on the 53-man roster? Ultimately, it's my final say. But again, Mike said it yesterday, Mike wouldn't have taken this job, and this is something we talked about in the interview process. Mike wouldn't have taken this job if we weren't comfortable with each other. That's not going to be Mike's guys or Eliot's guys. They are going to be Patriots guys, and we're excited to share the vision to work together to improve the roster. So that's going to be the headline from this whole thing. And I'm sure there's a bunch of, whether it's they're listening to reactive talk show radio hosts or just Patriots fans hearing this, some of them are going to be quivering under their covers about, is this just going to be the same thing as last year? I am here to tell you that it is not. Don't worry about this, okay? This is not a big deal. This is the way I would read it. And this is part informed opinion. This is part experience in the league, in part knowing a lot of the particulars involved. So what you need to understand is last year, Eliot Wolf signed a contract to be the Patriots' executive vice president of player personnel. I don't think it would be a stretch to say that in that contract, it was written in there, whether it was the 90-man roster or 53-man roster, it was written into his contract that Eliot Wolf had final say. Fast forward a year later, Jerod Mayo is gone. There's a whole new setup. Outside of just outright firing Eliot Wolf, you're not just going to change a contract after 1 year. You're not just going to rip it up and do a new one and you could do it, but that's just not the way the Crafts were going to do things. Understand this. The Crafts like Eliot Wolf. They like the setup. They like the change in the scouting system, which basically sounded like from Wolf's comments today, they are keeping and working within. It's my belief that Robert Kraft wanted Mike Vrabel to give this new setup a chance. How long that is, I don't know. Teams differ. It could be through this offseason. It could be through the season to see sort of the results. But basically, I think, Robert and Jonathan probably told Mike, hey, look, we really like these people. And again, Eliot Wolf, Alonzo Highsmith, Pat Stewart, all of these guys have excellent reputations around the league. They might get trashed around here, but trust me when I tell you that these guys are well respected, and all of them have the experience, had the resume to do these jobs. This is not a case of them being out of their depth like Gerard Mayo was as head coach. That's not the truth here, especially with Eliot Wolf, and even Pat Stewart in his role as sort of the head of the pro personnel department. But it's my belief that, Robert Kraft basically told Mike, we'd like you to give a look at these guys. But at the end of the day, Mike, you're in charge. And I think Eliot knows it. And also, I think Eliot likes his job. I think he'd like to stay here. Eliot has a reputation for working really, really well with others. And so if you're Eliot Wolf, you're not going to piss off the head coach who ownership is going to side with. I'm sure Kraft basically told him, if push comes to shove, you're going to get your way. But, let's try to work with other people, all that, keep the structure in place. So technically, do I think that Wolf still has the contract language that he has final say? Yeah. But that doesn't mean it's the case. I mean, let's use an example. Say with the 4th overall pick, say Mike Vrabel wants Mason Graham, the Michigan defensive tackle, and Eliot Wolf wants Will Campbell. Mike Vrabel's going to get his way. He's going to get whatever he wants. I mean, what's Eliot Wolf going to do? Sue the Patriots for breach of contract? So it's going to be popular on sports talk radio. I've already heard some things. People are panicked. I've heard about it on Twitter. People just need to relax. Don't worry about, this is why, I don't care what people say at podiums. I don't care what people say. I don't care what draft picks say at the combine. It doesn't matter. What matters is what goes on behind the scenes. What matters is the film evaluation of these players. Everybody just needs to relax. There's a new sheriff in town, and like I said on Felger and Maz yesterday, and it's interesting that Eliot mentioned Ryan Cowden. He mentioned in a triumvirate, mentioned Mike Vrabel, Ryan Cowden, and John Stryker Stretch, affectionately known as Stretch. He mentioned all 3 of those guys. Those are the guys with power. It's basically, they're playing nice, and maybe this works for a very long time. But when push comes to shove, when they make decisions about this team going forward, whether it's free agency or draft picks, Vrabel's going to be in consultation with everybody. But when it comes down to it, he's going to be looking at Cowden. He's going to be looking at Stryker. And those 3 are going to be on the same page with everything. And I think Wolf's going to be right there with them. They look to be getting along really well at the Senior Bowl. But, those 3, the Titans 3, those guys are going to be running everything. And Eliot has a place. Eliot has experience. Eliot has thoughts. But when it comes to decision making, those 3 are going to be at the center. That's all you need to know. Okay? So I wouldn't worry about too much else. A couple other interesting comments. Not to get into specifics about what he said, but Wolf was asked about when actually he brought up the offensive line by himself because he didn't touch on that position group earlier, and he was asked about receivers. And it sure sounds like from Eliot Wolf's comments that he's not really crazy about the top of this draft at either position. He basically said the strength is in the middle of rounds for both of those positions. So it'll be interesting to see if that has any effects. It could be a smokescreen. It could be the Patriots love the top of the draft. They love Will Campbell. They love the Arizona receiver, but they're throwing up a smokescreen. That definitely happens. I thought his comment on Jalen Polk. Let's go to that. He was asked about Jalen Polk. He said, I hate to use this analogy, but in the Dark Knight, the hero you need isn't the hero that you have. He was a young player that came in and he's mature, he's smart. I think organizationally, we maybe put too much on his plate early, and I think that really kind of stunted his growth a little bit. And he's aware of that, and we've talked about it, and he's going to continue to work hard and rehab and do the things that are necessary to improve. I think this would go to, sort of my point about that I think the offensive coaching, specifically in the wide receiver room, sort of left a lot to be desired and didn't do Jalen Polk and perhaps Javon Baker any favors. Now, what's interesting, and this was a valid point, I heard Chris Gasper last night on NBC Sports Boston talk about people talk about they make excuses or the coaching because of Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, but he's like, nobody brings up the fact that Kayshon Boutte went from no role to the best receiver on the team. It's a valid argument to make. You could also make the argument that Kayshon Boutte, first of all, he had different coaches as a rookie. Maybe he learned a lot. Maybe he learned a lot behind the scenes. Remember, he wasn't pushed. He wasn't pushed for a big role early. He was brought along slowly. Perhaps that would have worked with Jalen Polk. Of course, Javon Baker we didn't see very much, but he did get thrust in, I think, a little bit early on in the season. But I think that when you talk about Kayshon Boutte, just being a pro and going through it once, you're automatically going to be better in year two. Do I think that the coaches were responsible for that? I don't know. But I wouldn't. It's apples and oranges to me. When you're looking at the two rookies and Boutte, you can't just say, well, the coaching was good enough for Boutte, it wasn't good enough, so it should have been good enough for the other two. I just don't know if I believe that. But it's a valid point. It could be. What else? Wolf was asked about spending are they going to spend to the cap or spend the cap space that they have? Nobody ever does that. And as I wrote about the other day, it's not about the cap. Like $120 million in cap space is a crap ton of cap space that you're not gonna spend in 1 year. You're just not. And the reason that they're here is because they have a bad roster. It's because they didn't spend to keep people. They didn't spend to keep Jacoby Myers. They didn't spend to keep Joe Thuney. They finally spent on extensions last year that were well overdue. But for the most part, the reason why you have a lot of cap space is because your team stinks. And that's because of what happened under Bill Belichick at the end. You don't have enough guys that you're extending and giving big extensions to and paying top of the market. Those are few and far between for this team right now. And the other thing is, there's nobody brings up when they talk about the 10-year period where the Patriots were last in cash spending. They don't bring up the fact that for 4 of those years, almost half of those years, the Patriots paid Cam Newton $1 million and they had 3 years of Mac Jones on a rookie contract. You look at the Eagles are the great example. That look how much more money that they've spent, how much more cash. Yeah, because they paid Carson Wentz top of the market, ate that contract, and then they paid Jalen Hurts top of the market, let alone they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, players, plus the offensive linemen, all these guys that were internal developed players that now these guys, they have to pay them a lot of money. That's the ideal. That's the way the Patriots used to be back when they were, near the top of, in terms of their cap, how tight they were to the cap every year. It's because they had a damn good team. The Patriots stink. They have a lot of cap room. But again, they shouldn't be expected to spend to the cap, use all the cap space. It's about cash spending. And the Patriots have plenty of money over the next 2 years to spend, and I expect them to do that. And Wolf used the word, we're not going to be frivolous. They shouldn't be. Don't go giving, don't give Amari Cooper $25 million a year. He ain't worth that. Even a lot of people, I was just talking to an NFL coach today, and they used the example of, are you going to pay T. Higgins more than Justin Jefferson? Are you really going to do that? So I also thought it was a very valid point that Wolf. Let's talk about, first of all, he took responsibility for last year. I thought that was good. Not that I expected anything else, but he said ultimately the roster was on me. We were 4-13. Certainly the free agent class didn't live up to our expectations. The draft class is too soon to tell, but we are expecting a bigger impact from some of those guys. We're still hopeful to get to that point. The fans understanding their frustrations. I share those frustrations. It's been difficult. Every hit on Jacoby or Drake during the season, I felt responsible for that. Thought that was a good line. Just ultimately, we didn't get enough done up front. Related to that, he did talk about, where was it? Cap space. Okay. Well, I'm just going to paraphrase. Basically, talked about how last year they didn't execute well, and they didn't have a lot of background on these players. I mean, it sounded like, I couldn't hear the question, but it sounded like, how do you make corrections from last year? And I think the lesson that they learned was, especially with guys like Chukwuekorfor or maybe KJ Osborne or, basically anybody that they brought in, a lot of times they didn't have any background on these players. And this is huge. And I think this is an asset, and Wolf talked about it. It's an asset for this coaching staff where you have guys, so many guys from all over the place that, whether it was Doug Marrone with the Saints, Thomas Brown with the Panthers, Bears, Rams, Cowden's coming from the Giants, Vrabel, of course, and all those guys know all the Tennessee guys. McDaniels knows all the Raiders guys, of course, and some of the Patriots, some of the ex-Patriots. There's guys all over. Todd Downing, has been sort of all over the place. So a lot of these guys have background with prospective free agents, especially the mid-tier guys, where I think really fans are going to look at the top of the free agent class and want all these shiny objects, if any are there. But I think really if the Patriots are going to compete and they're going to greatly improve this year, it's because they knock it out of the park as far as the mid-class free agents. Like, for example, Josh McDaniels, like, Robert Spillane, I think Luke Masterson, they're both linebackers, good players, good role players. Amir Abdullah, the running back, he's in his 30s, but he's a damn good little sort of, James White type of running back. So, like, Josh has the background with these guys. There's a linebacker, Divine Diablo from the Raiders. Little bit of a Jamie Collins light. I don't know how bright he is, but awesome athlete. McDaniels is going to have a lot of background on him. So I liked how Wolf talked about that, and I do think that's going to be an asset, and maybe was a blind spot for a lot of people last year. So I think that's about it. Those are sort of the things that stood out to me as far as Wolf's comments. Again, I wouldn't get too crazy about final say or anything. There's a new sheriff in town. Mike Vrabel would not be here if he wasn't in charge or didn't know he couldn't dictate what he wanted. And he will be able to dictate it. And Wolf's going to be part of that and help him along with Ryan Cowden. And we'll see what happens. I expect things to be a lot better. But just don't fret about the words. Okay? Let's watch the actions once they get into things. So that's it for now. Nick and I will be back later in the week. Maybe wrap up a couple things. Again, check out Prize Picks and promo code CLNS. And check out the great people at naturnohome.com. They're awesome. They did great work with my furnace, and you'd love them. I trust them. So you should too. Again, that's naturnohome.com/Bedard. That's NOTTURNO home.com/Bedard. All right. Everybody have a great night, and we'll see you later in the week.